Composition 1. So I was, that's why I contacted you. Miss Marshall found, I guess you had been communicating with her, and she saw the literacy knowledge. Like I said, we were tasked with that for an assessment, but the person that gave us that task couldn't explain what it was. And so I was really excited to see that in your content.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I think I was previously in contact with Norma too, so I'm happy that I've had the opportunity to have a little bit of discussion with both of you. And Colton, it's nice to meet you during this meeting as well, and have the opportunity to share some of this information with you too. And I'm happy to.
I'm sorry. He's taking over the English department, so he's the new.
Okay.
He'll be the new program head of that department.
Okay, perfect. Well, very happy to have you at this meeting and have the opportunity to discuss these materials with you too. And I'm happy to ship you a copy of the textbook if that would be helpful, just a physical copy for you to take a look at too.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. I'll get that out after this meeting. And just for my knowledge, is the school address the best to ship to? If not, you can, yeah?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, I will go ahead and share my screen so that we can get started with that corresponding online software that goes along with those physical materials that you all have been shipped. Are you able to see my screen here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So my kind of outline for today is I'm just going to take a brief overview of the student side of the Hawk software within the lesson of one of our English composition lessons, and then I'll jump over to our instructor side of our software and give you guys a little bit of an idea of how you would walk through course setup for your students and some of the customization options that are available to you within this software. So starting out, and if you guys have any questions, just feel free to kind of stop me as we go, and I'm happy to address those as we're going along or as they kind of pop up during this presentation.
Hannah, just before you start, we do have a faculty council meeting at 10 o'clock.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
I'll be sure to. I think we'll have plenty of time to go through it. This student side won't take too long, and neither will the instructor side. So we should have plenty of time for even questions and discussion throughout this before that department meeting. So taking a look at this lesson within our English composition title, this screen that you see here is going to look the same no matter what lesson your students click into and no matter what Hawks product they're working with. So they will always see these same three modes of learn, practice, and certify. We keep this interface very simple and consistent so that your student knows where their resources are and where their homework assignment is at. So learn and practice are intended to prepare students for certify, which is that homework assignment that they complete for a grade. And one quick note that I'll mention here is I have previously been in contact with the math department at College of the Muscogee Nation as well. And we have actually set up integration with, I believe it's D2L that you all use.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we've gone through that integration process with the math department currently. And what that integration allows for is you can have automatic grade and roster syncing so that you're not manually transferring these grades between Hawks and your D2L course. There's also a single sign-on option for your students so that they don't have to navigate to both platforms to sign in. And you can even deep link these assignments into your D2L course. So you could have an assignment saying lesson 8.6, professional writing. If your student clicks on that within their D2L course, they're taken directly to this page. So they don't have to navigate anywhere else within the Hawks platform to get to that assignment. And then jumping into Learn, this is a multimedia presentation of the instructional content. So this is the exact same content that your student would see in the textbook or in the ebook for this particular English composition title. And my internet is a little slow this morning, so take a moment for us to get in here. But this content, in addition to it having the same instructional content that's within our textbook and ebook, we've also built in some opportunities for your students to engage and interact with the content as well. So one highlight that I'll make is right here where it says no video. These second edition titles are brand new, so the software is still in the process of being released and deployed so that everyone can see it, but it is expected release fully for the fall 2021 semester. So rather than seeing no video here, your students would typically see watch, and that's for every single lesson. So if they click on that watch button, they're opened up to a lesson level video that shows an actual instructor narrating the key concepts from the lesson. So those are typically about 5 to 10 minutes long, and it's really just a brief synopsis of what's being covered. So if the student's coming out of class time and needs a brief refresher, they can utilize those videos to refresh themselves on what's being covered here. Additionally, we have also provided them with on your own activities. So these help them to immediately apply the concepts that they're learning as they're reading through these pages. Right here, this one is free response. So the student can type directly into the screen, and then they do have the ability to print these free response on your own activities. So you could have them print these and bring them into class time, or they can print them for their own reference as well. Helpful hints are provided to help the student reflect on how the content is applicable outside of the pages that they're reading here. We also provide group activities, so you could assign these to your students inside or outside of class time, or maybe as a discussion board post. And then everything in this learn mode is customizable to you as the instructor. So you can actually hide any of these pages from your students if there's content that you don't cover. You could replace any of this content with your own content so that it's reflective of how you like to teach your course. Or you can simply add what you see here, which we call a learn screen note. So at the top of the screen, your student would still see that same information that's pulled from the textbook or the ebook, but at the bottom of the screen, they'll see any additional information that you'd like to provide to them. And that can also include embedded videos or interactives here as well. So if you have a YouTube library of videos and you want to incorporate those here, you certainly can, or maybe something like a Google form or a Google quiz to help the students stop and think about what they're reading through here. And then the second type of on your own activity that we provide is click to select. So a little opposite of that free response activity, right here the student is actually provided with some immediate feedback as they are immediately applying these concepts. And then within our English composition titles, we also provide writing environments to the students. So again, an additional opportunity for them to think about how this content can be applied to their personal, professional, or academic lives. Further resources will link out to articles or videos or any outside content that's reflective of what the student is seeing here. And then the last coverage that I'll make before we get to the end of this lesson is our reflection questions. So again, an opportunity for the student to stop and think about what they're reading through, how this content is applicable. And these reflection questions could again be a short answer quiz, or they could be a discussion board post, or an opportunity just for further engagement for your students. And then at the end of every lesson, we do provide writing prompts. So this is a brand new addition to this second edition English composition title. And you could assign these again as a short essay assignment, a discussion board post, or just a short answer quiz for your students. And beyond that, we also do provide all of the key terms and definitions that the students saw throughout this lesson. So it's just a quick reference of those key terms and definitions here.
That's one of the difficulties with the book that we have now. There's vocabulary in it that our students don't understand, and they really don't take the time to, work on their vocabulary. So we're a very small school. We were just accredited in 2016, and it's kind of like a bridge school to the larger institutions. So we do have, those type of, what do you call them?
Very remedial students.
Yes, yes.
And that's where we need to focus, is those beginning skills of academic writing, because what we have now, it sets it up to do some of the similar stuff they would do in a regular 4-year institution.
Right.
And we need to walk them into just the basis of academic writing. So when they do, if they choose to go to this 4-year institutions, that they're able to walk in that classroom and not be lost by the first assignment they get.
Mhm.
Right. That certainly makes sense. And a neat feature, so really that's how Hawk's English composition title is set up for the students to just develop those foundational skills of writing. So not really, taking them further into those deep writing assignments, but really building the foundation of skills that they'll need to be successful in those writing assignments. A good aspect of the Hawk software that's unique to us as a company is that we also do provide lifetime licensing to your students. So once they have access to this software, they never lose it. So if they are going to that 4-year institution and say, I really need to come back and brush up on my grammar or brush up on, these topics within the professional writing lesson, they can always refer back to this software and this content to work through any of those lessons that they need to refresh themselves on when they do go to that, 4-year institution course for writing.
That's great. So it really is. Where were you about 6 years ago? Oh,
we were here, but we're much newer to the English discipline. So these titles are a little bit newer to our world, but happy that we're here now. So
yes.
that I'm glad to hear that would be helpful for your students too.
Great. It would be great. Yes.
And just one last mention within this Learn mode is that we also do, at the end of relevant lessons, provide a writing application to your students. So these are a short annotated writing piece or essay that incorporates all of those key concepts that they just saw throughout the lesson. So right here, since we're in a professional writing topic, your students are given an example resume that incorporate all of those aspects that they just worked through within this lesson 8.6. All right, and I'm going to come out of our Learn mode and I'll go straight into practice. So this practice mode is just that. It's an opportunity for your students to practice with similar question types that they'll be seeing in that certified homework assignment. All of the questions in Hawk software are algorithmically generated. So students can actually see different versions of the same question type here. So to show you what that would look like, my question is, which of the following is an example of professional writing? And if I click this try similar button, I have new answer options that generate, but my question stays the same. So if your student isn't quite comfortable working with this question type or this concept, they do have an additional amount of practice to get comfortable applying, an example of professional writing here. And then kind of opposite of that, your student can also skip over questions within this practice mode, so they can really spend their time and efforts working with questions that they might not feel as comfortable answering yet. And as I move through some of these, you might notice that it's a pretty robust question bank for your students to work with. So not all of the questions are multiple choice, but some are click to select or select all that apply. And coming to this bottom left-hand side, we also provide your students with a tutor feature. So within this tutor feature, they're opened up to a hint, which provides them with the relevant definitions to the topics that they're being asked about in the question. So in addition to these definitions, the student might also be given an alternate example to see how that concept is applied in a different context. But ultimately, this hint is intended to direct the students in the right way to get to that correct solution for the question that they're working with here. And then I'm going to go ahead and enter an answer so that we can see some answer feedback as well. So just as with many software systems, your student is told this answer is correct or this answer is incorrect. But here at Hawks, we try to take that incorrect feedback just a step further and explain to the student why their question or their answer is incorrect here. So on this bottom right-hand side, of course, they can try the question again if they say, okay, I meant to click this instead of this, or they might know, what mistake they might have made. But if they need that further explanation, they can click this explain error option. So within my explain error, I'm reminded of my answer. I'm reminded of the question that I was working with. And then I'm told the answer you chose uses appropriately formal and professional language. Keep in mind that professional writing follows certain standards or conventions that help you communicate effectively with colleagues, supervisors, clients, or potential employers. So right there, instead of just saying, this is wrong, try again, we're going to say, this is wrong because you chose an answer that uses appropriately formal and professional language. And ultimately, we want your students to be able to return to that question and utilize this specific feedback to, again, work through it and get to that correct answer. We also want to stop your students at any point in this process when they do make a mistake to correct that mistake so that they don't continue making those same mistakes and errors over and over again until they become embedded into their long-term memory. And then at this top right-hand corner, just as we saw in that tutor feature, your student can also utilize a hint here, so helpful definitions or relevant examples. And then within the tutor and the explain error features, the student can also toggle back to that learn mode. So they can go back and watch that video or utilize some of those on your own activities to further work with the instructional content. And lastly, we do provide the correct answer to every version of every question within this practice mode. But just as we did with that incorrect answer, we're going to say this is correct because to provide that fundamental differentiation between correct versus incorrect as your students are working through these questions and learning these concepts within this practice mode. All right, did you guys have any questions about the practice mode?
No, it's very explanatory for me. How about you, Colton?
Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with that. One of the previous schools I taught at, we used a different kind of software, but it kind of had the same idea. But this one actually goes into a little more detail, given those incorrect answer feedback. That's a very important thing because in the software we did use, the students would go through it and not get it correct, go back through it and try to fix the answers they missed and just keep going until they finally hit the process of elimination and, you know, got them all correct. So it's a very good feature to have them get that crucial feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is definitely wonderful to hear. That's exactly what we're trying to prevent within this practice mode is that guess and check method for them to be able to remove that. And that's something that I'll actually speak to a little bit further as we do jump into this certify mode too, because that's really the intention of the Hawk software here is to have your students learning on a per concept level rather than a per question level. So as I do explain our mastery-based approach, we'll kind of see further understanding of how that's incorporated into our software here. So as I do come into the certify mode, you might notice it looks very similar to that practice mode. It's the same question type that your students were working with, but it's still that algorithmic generation of questions. So we do have those different versions here, as well as for each student in this certify assignment, they'll have the questions in a different order and they'll each have different versions of those questions. But there are two key differences that we like to point out within this certify mode. So the first is that we remove learning aids here. So you might notice at the bottom of the screen, they don't have tutor, skip, try similar anymore. And to remove those is kind of similar to Colton, what you were just saying. If those learning aids are accessible to your students, we find that they'll lean and depend on those so much that they'll become a crutch to the student. So that when it becomes quiz or test time and inevitably those crutches are removed, they don't have access to those learning aids anymore, the student typically is unable to stand on their own and has really a false understanding of where their knowledge is at with this material. So right here directly in this low stakes homework assignment, we're going to say, we're removing those learning aids. You don't have access to those anymore in this certify assignment. And we're going to push you to build that foundational understanding of this material on your own. And then the second key difference within this certify mode is that the assignment is made mastery based. So your students are given a set number of questions. Of those questions, they can miss a few of them and still pass the assignment. However, they must get about 80% of the questions correct in order to pass. So whenever I say pass here, they are given full credit, 100%, for reaching that mastery level and demonstrating competency on these topics. As the instructor, you can change the number and types of questions in Practice and Certify, and you can also adjust that mastery level from 80% to whatever you see fit for your student. So for this particular lesson that I'm working in, at the top of the screen here, I have 10 questions. And then looking at my orange heart, it's kind of like my strikes or lives that I'm working with. So I can miss 2 of these questions and still reach that mastery level and get that 100 in the grade book. But if I do miss that 3rd question here and dip below my set mastery level, the software is going to take me out of this certify mode, place me back into that practice mode, where I'm then given a customized set of questions for targeted remediation based on the questions that I missed in certify. So that's the more so adaptive component of the Hawk software. We're going to allow students the opportunity to practice the exact question types that they were missing, work with their individual skill gaps, and then at any point in time, they can return back to this certify mode with absolutely no penalty, as long as it's before your specified due date. And they have an unlimited amount of attempts to come back in here and reach that mastery level and demonstrate competency on this material. So ultimately, we want to provide your students with that motivational approach to say, you have as many chances as you need. You always have the opportunity to get that 100 in the grade book. And in between those unsuccessful attempts, you can utilize that explain error or those tutor features to really gather a further understanding of this material. But ultimately, in this homework assignment, we are going to hold them to a higher standard of learning by saying you will be asked to demonstrate competency or mastery on a certain percentage of this content at one time. Do you guys have any questions about mastery, any concerns about it, or feel like it would be beneficial for your students in this composition course?
I really love the immediate feedback, and like you say, it's like taking the training wheels off and letting them go. I think that's it's exactly what we need here, because it, you know, they come in very, you know, challenged already, and when they and if they're I've had to modify what we do here, so it's, you know, it's been very demanding. But with this, they can do it on their own, and they really don't need me, but I'm there if they do. You know, I think it's a worthwhile program to look at. I'm not familiar with all the like Colton is in the high school level. I'm sure they must use this, but I was at the University of Oklahoma for 13 years teaching comp. So there, you know, they just expect you to come in, know it, and do it. So for me, this is quite new, and it's exciting to see that there's, you know, something developed already, and that we don't have to start, you know, developing the wheel all over again.
Absolutely, absolutely. Colton, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I'm used to dealing with softwares like this. I mean, I've worked between the middle school and elementary school, and I worked in a big district where we used lots of different technologies. And so it's very great because I dealt with a lot of remedial students in the district I worked in, and have had to rebuild those writing programs. And things like this are the most helpful, where they can see it, they can manipulate it on their own. And that's very hard to do with writing because, you know, when you turn in writing, you get graded on it and you feel bad about yourself. And to be able to not have it come from your instructor, but still get that feedback gives us a chance to still, you know, open that door to help them without them feeling they're getting negativity from us. Because I think that crushes a lot of their ability to write, because they feel like everything they do is wrong because they can't take the criticism correctly.
Right. Absolutely. That's definitely helpful to hear how you guys could see this software being utilized in your course. And this is essentially how our English composition software was developed. So a little bit of background on these composition titles from Hawks is that we actually don't have one specific author for these titles. They were written based on contributing instructors who teach English composition courses around the country. So most of what you see here within these composition titles is what, instructors just like you who teach students within composition say, my students, when they get to those writing assignments, I'm seeing this, and this that are concepts that they, either didn't come in knowing or need a further understanding of when they are writing those assignments. And so this software is really just meant to be, as I mentioned, the backbone for your students. It's really, and I think you both are seeing the utilization of that potential in your courses, is that, this is not going to take the place of those major essays that they're writing within composition, but it is going to assist them with being successful in writing those essays while still providing them with the opportunity to correct some of those concepts that they might not be coming in from alternate courses already having.
Right.
What is this pre-certify button down here?
Yeah, so initially practice is set to this pre-certify mode because our certify mode is going to show students questions in a randomized order of difficulty. So we're not going to go from easy to hard. We're not going to go from hard to easy. So pre-certify essentially means you're going to see those questions in practice in that randomized order, just like you would see them in certify.
Okay.
Now your students can switch those modes and say, okay, I just want to take a look at high difficulty in practice, or another, like one of those other difficulties they would be working.
And so the student can change that on their side.
Yes, they can.
Okay.
So that's available to change within that practice mode.
And that's important, I think, too, because I do have students this trimester who are able to work on their own, and they know how to analyze. And I mean, they're just jumping right into it. And they ask, can I write more than this? And I'm just like, yes, so it's good that they have that option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and ultimately, these learn and practice modes are not required for your students either. So if you have students who are ready to go and say, I can certify this, I'm going to jump in, they can go straight to that certify mode. They don't need to step foot in those learn or practice modes.
Right.
But you as the instructor do have the ability to require that practice mode after a certain number of unsuccessful certify attempts. So the intention of this software is not to have your students go into certify 10 times and continuously just jump back in and try again and try again. It's really for them to practice what you don't know and then prepare yourself to jump into certify and be successful with that mastery level. So you as an instructor could say, after 3 unsuccessful certify attempts, I'm going to require you to complete 80% of practice before you do go back into certify again.
Oh, that's good.
All right. Now I'm going to come back out to our English composition. I'm in our English composition with integrated review title. So there is kind of a key difference between those two titles, and I'll briefly explain that now. The key difference that you'll really see is in our software though. So English composition has all of those chapters and all of those lessons, but English composition with integrated review actually has the same credit level lessons as English composition, but you're also going to see scaffolded integrated review chapters. So right here I have chapter 1R and then chapter 1. This is the same chapter 1 as English composition, but I have this -R chapter that's going to prepare me for that chapter 1 here. So that's just a main key difference between those two titles within the software. And then coming over to web test, your students can also create a practice test here for themselves. So if you're giving cumulative exams in the course, they can come in and pull lessons from different chapters and really utilize this practice test as a study tool to figure out which lessons they might need to study a little bit more before that cumulative exam. And lastly, I'll point out Smart Review. So this is an all-in-one writing submission platform that allows for peer and instructor review. So we see some instructors utilizing this by posting articles for their students to read and then questions that they want the students to answer within this Smart Review platform. It could also be utilized for, peer review of students' assignments during the revision process. So to show you what that looks like, I'll come into a peer review here, but this looks the same for an instructor review. So you would be seeing this as an instructor if you were coming in and reviewing the student's writing assignment, just as your student would during a peer review. So right here at the bottom, you can create a rubric. So this is completely customizable. You can change all of these categories. You can change the point values here. And then we do have an option for general comment. So you could have your students expand on their point values that they're distributing within that rubric, saying, okay, I gave a 2 out of 5 on organization because of this, this, and this. And then coming out of that rubric, at the top of the screen here, that add tags and comments feature is what allows them to really interact with the review. So they have this highlighter feature that pops up, and they can highlight a word, a phrase, a paragraph, whatever they want to highlight here. And then they can add a tag, they can add a comment, or they can add both. So I could come in here and say, this should go under spelling. And then I could also say, this should be spelled reader. So right there, once I add those, I can click save. And then all of those tags and comments are added to this left-hand sidebar. So students can go back and really see what they've added to the paper versus what they still need to go through during this review. As the instructor, you can also require a certain amount of tags and comments to be added here. So you can really ensure the integrity of the student's peer review, make sure they're coming in and working with the paper instead of just clicking in and out of this screen. And it's oftentimes utilized a lot by instructors during this revision process is our filter by tags feature. So as the instructor, you can use this filtering feature to come in and see where your students are proficient in their writing versus where students might be struggling in their writing. So maybe you come in and you see, okay, there's been a lot of tags for run-on sentences. That's something that, needs to be addressed with this particular student within their writing. And that's something you can maybe come to in office hours or connect directly with that student about for their writing specifically. Do you guys have any questions about Smart Review?
No, that's amazing, because can't tell you how many green pens I go through every trimester. And our program on D2L, it's not conducive to a positive format. I mean, it's difficult for them to read because it takes the print size really small, and you can't really comment the way you want to comment.
So you have to download it and make your own document and re-upload the document. Does this allow for you to print like or pull up like a report of like all the comments that have been tagged, like you could see across the whole class? So like if you had a group of students that all had run-on sentence problems, that you could like look at that report and say, hey, I need to address this with the whole class.
Let me check on that. As far as my knowledge goes, it's more so on a per student basis of for these Smart Review assignments and going in and really taking a look at individual students' papers. But let me see if there is a way that we could maybe combine all of those tags or comments and really get more of an average on the class of what you're seeing there. I'll check on that for you. And one thing to note with this Smart Review assignment is that it really is meant to be more so utilized during that revision part of the writing process. And I say that is because if your students are copying and pasting a paper from Microsoft Word into this Smart Review platform, it won't keep the formatting. So that's one caveat to kind of more so utilizing this in a final draft format, is that, you know, if your students are using that MLA or APA formatting, that's not going to copy over into the Smart Review platform. So it is really meant more so to be an opportunity for the students to identify what they need to correct before they do submit that final draft.
Does it have a built-in, like Turnitin.com originality reports or anything like that?
So it doesn't have a plagiarism checker.
Okay.
Did you guys have any other questions about Smart Review?
Holden?
No, I'm good.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to our instructor account here so that I can just give you guys a brief idea of some of the functionality that you would be working with in terms of course setup and customization with Hawk. So when I do come into my instructor platform, you'll see here if you do have multiple Hawks titles, those can all be added to this same account so that you're not having to navigate multiple places for that. Also at the top here, I will point out, we do have an instructor dashboard, but we also have a student dashboard. So exactly what we just saw on that student side, you can be enrolled in your own course here, and you can see exactly what your students are seeing as you're setting up the course and as you're assigning assignments to them. And then coming into my English composition course, I'm going to come under assignments. So the first note that I'll make is how you essentially assign due dates to your students. So right here under lesson due dates, before we go into how to assign those, I do want to point out that the Hawks gradebook does work with a template format. And what this template format allows for is for individual settings to be shared between multiple instructors or multiple sections. So Colton, if you were creating due dates for this composition course and Walela wanted to use those for her courses as well, you guys could share those with one another so that you're not both having to put in those same due dates for your courses.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, if you do teach two sections of the composition course, you can set up those due dates for one section and then immediately apply them to that other section. You're not having to do twice the work here.
Oh, yay.
And then we also do have a master copy template too. So if Colton was setting up this entire course and Walela, you just wanted to copy everything that he set up, you can copy his all of his settings within his gradebook so that you don't essentially have to set up any of that on your own.
Now, can you do that from trimester to trimester?
Yes, you can. So you can copy the settings between semesters. What we do recommend here is that when you're coming in to one of these templates, so I just clicked the section name here. This could be fall 2021 homework due date. So we do recommend that you kind of name these templates based on the semester that you're working with so that you're aware as you do go to multiple trimesters or semesters, you know which one is reflective of that template. But you can, of course, copy those over between multiple trimesters without having to recreate the work for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then to assign a due date here, you'll simply click on this calendar icon and select the date that you want the assignment to be due. So once you do that, you simply come to the bottom and you click Save Changes, and that lesson is automatically assigned to your student. So that's the Hawks pre-created lesson that has those initial questions without any changes that you might want to make as the instructor. I'll also note right here where it says share, you can share those due dates again with other instructors. Shift multiple due dates. Walela, this has a little bit to do with your question. Mm-hmm. This allows you to shift those due dates all at once between multiple trimesters or semesters. Okay, so you don't have to change every single one of these due dates. You would simply put in the first date from one trimester, the first date from another one, and then it automatically shifts all of those at one time. And then under Show Additional Options, you can also choose when to make these lessons visible for your students. So if you don't want them working ahead in the course, or seeing all the lessons that you're assigning for the entire course, you can use these visible on dates to say, I only want my students to see these lessons for week 1, and then so on and so forth. And lastly, you can also assign lessons without having a due date too. So if it's more so that review part of the process and there's not necessarily a date that your students need to complete that lesson by, you can utilize this assign feature. And then set prerequisites allows you to make any lesson, quiz, or test a prerequisite for any other lesson. So if you want to say, I want to make all of chapter 1 lessons that I'm assigning, I want my students to complete those before they're able to go to any lesson in chapter 2, you can use that set prerequisites option to set that up.
Ah.
All right. And then I'm going to come back out of assignment, and I'll come right here to, well, actually I'll come down first to curriculum. So those due dates are assigning, as I mentioned, the Hawks pre-created lessons, but curriculum is where you can come if you want to customize any of those learn, practice, or certify modes. So again, this is a template format, so this customization can be shared between instructors or between sections. And then coming in here, some of these features at the top here, right here, you'll see allow students to unsuccessfully attempt certify a certain number of times before requiring practice, like we mentioned before. Flex Mastery also allows students to retry a missed question. If you are utilizing this, we only recommend maybe 1 additional attempt on a question because, again, we don't want the students to just continue trying the same question over and over again until they get the right answer. And then coming to the bottom here, in order to edit a lesson, you simply click the hyperlink that's provided here, and this opens you up to our lesson builder tool. So once this opens, on the left-hand side, you'll see an entire question bank of our questions for this lesson. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see the Hawks pre-created assignment. So right here, you can add questions or remove questions from these pre-created assignments to really make sure your students are working with the questions that you want them to work with in those practice and certify modes. And then this wheel right here, if you click Open Learn, that's where you can edit the Learn mode. So hiding any of those screens, adding your own instructional content, that's where that customization can be completed. And then coming back out to assignments, I'll come under Web Test. So creating a quiz or test is the same process as editing any of those lessons. So you simply just go to the question bank, click whatever questions you want to add to your quiz or test, and then you can assign it as an online assignment. You can print or export to a Word document any assignment that you create here, and you can print or export up to 10 versions of the quiz or test at a time. So you can have, version A, B, C, D for each of your students, so they're not working with the same question type or the same versions of the questions. You can also utilize this feature to create worksheets for your students in class too. But what I want to go through is some of our settings for these quizzes and tests if you are assigning them online. So right here, you would simply enter a start and end date and time. You can also password protect the quiz or test, set a time limit, allow a certain number of attempts, choose the grading method if you do allow multiple attempts, and then utilize these features for our gradebook option. So you can choose whether it goes under tests or quizzes, choose whether it goes into the gradebook or not, if it's a bonus or visible to the student.
And this is connected to D2L?
It is.
Okay.
So to assign this quiz or test in Hawks, those due dates and time limits and everything, all the settings are automatically synced to D2L. So your student clicks on the link to test one, and all the settings from here are applied to the test. All right, and then student settings by test is where you can adjust web test settings on a per test basis for one or more students. So if you have a student who can't take the test on the day and time that you assign it, you can change that setting there. Prerequisites, that's the same as we saw under due date. You can make any lesson, quiz, or test a prerequisite for this test. So you can make the first 3 exams prerequisites for the final exam right here. And then under additional settings, you can choose when to release grades to students, when to allow students to review the test. We do partner with Respondus to require a lockdown browser. So you can utilize this setting so that your students can't navigate to any other websites or right click or print as they have this test open. And then coming to the bottom here, you can also make a test pass-fail by designating a minimum passing grade to it, or you can make a test a diagnostic test. So with a diagnostic test, for any lesson that you add to that diagnostic exam, if your student scores at or above this designated level of proficiency here on any of those lessons, they're automatically given credit for our corresponding certified lessons. So for example, we have a pre-created grammar diagnostic assessment that has all of our grammar lessons added to it. So if you wanted to give that at the beginning of the course and say, okay, you're going to be given credit for any grammar topics that you already know, and then any grammar topics that you don't know, you'll have those certified assignments to complete. All right, and then manage IP template is where you can specify an IP address range where the test can be accessed. So that could be something like a computer or technology lab on campus. And then student settings by student allows you to adjust web test settings on a per student basis. So this is where you would set it up if you had a student who needed time and a half to take every quiz or test.
Oh.
All right, and then there's one more part of this gradebook that I do want to show you guys, which is our reporting feature. So I have switched over to our demonstration gradebook here. And the one report that I do want to show you all is our assignment reviewer tool. So this is a very comprehensive report that provides you with a breakdown of overall student performance as well as individual student performance. So right here, I can choose my section. I can choose between lessons or web tests. And then this bar graph will show me all of the lessons that I've assigned for this course. So for lesson 1.1 here, I see that 4 students completed it on time, 2 students completed it late, and 2 students have this assignment overdue. And then scrolling to the bottom here, I can see the total number of students who have certified and the average time that my students are spending in those learn, practice, and certified modes. So let's say I want to take a deeper look at lesson 1.1. Initially, I'm taken to the Students tab, which shows me a per student breakdown of performance in this lesson 1.1. So I have all of my students. I can see whether they've mastered or not. I can see the number of certified attempts they've had, date and time that the assignment was completed, and the exact time that the student is spending in those learn, practice, and certified modes. So let's say you want to take a look at your not mastered students. I just double click this score column. And let's take a look at Eric here. He's had 4 certify attempts, spent no time in learn and practice, and spent 14 minutes in certify. So likely he's just going in and trying it over and over again until he can have a chance of reaching that mastery level. So what I can do here is I'm going to click on Eric's name, and I can see every single attempt that he has had in certify. So if I click one of these attempts, I'm going to see the exact questions that Eric was asked, the exact answers that he had for each question, and the exact time that he spent on each question. So right here, time taken is shown at the top. I can see correct versus incorrect, and likely you're coming in here and want to take a look at your students' incorrect answers. So I can choose to hide correct here, and then just filter through those incorrect answers. And then if you want to go back and review a different attempt, you can simply click this overview button and navigate to any of those other attempts that your student has had in certify. All right, and then I'm going to click over to this analytics tab. So we just saw a breakdown of this lesson 1.1 on a per student basis, but this analytics tab is going to show you a breakdown of this lesson on a per question basis. So right here in this graph, I can see, okay, about half my students got this question 1 incorrect on this homework assignment. So if I come down here to the bottom, I'm given a serial number for this question, which I can select, and it'll bring up a version of that question. So you can utilize this tool to actually go over commonly missed questions from last night's homework or yesterday's test with your students, because there's no student data here. So this can be pulled up directly in front of them. All right. I know that was a lot of talking, a lot of information, and a lot of things to go through. So do you guys have any other questions that I can help address, or any features that I might not have shown that you would be looking for in a software system for the composition course?
I think for me, because this is, you know, I come from the old school, so this is really new to me, and it's going to take some time to learn it, but I'm really excited about it because it does exactly, or it asks exactly what our dean is asking, is that, you know, our assessments. So we have it, you know, we don't even have to really pay attention to it until the end when we have to review everything, but it assesses everything and gives you not only assessment comments, but it gives you numbers. And I think because we're just newly accredited, that's really important as far as our institution is concerned. And another thing I like is that it does take the remedial student and not make them feel like they're a remedial student. I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
I was thinking, I don't know if you're familiar with the platform Study Island. While I was sitting here looking at your material, that's what it reminds me of. And we use that a lot in the middle school, elementary schools that I've been in. And this is the type of stuff that builds up, you know, learning. It's not just a flat surface that they can, you know, they can climb as high as they want to, or they can, you know, stay in that medial range. But this is going to allow us to show proficiency and push it forward, as, you know, we can prove what we're actually learning here instead of just passing the students on to the next class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I am so happy to hear that, and so thankful to both of you to have this opportunity to share this software system with you. We do have a lot of schools who use some of our reports for accreditation purposes. So hearing that you all are duly accredited, hopefully this software system can really be a backbone and, you know, assisting through that process of making sure that your students are reaching those proficiency levels. So as I know you all have a meeting in about 4 minutes, and definitely don't want to keep you over our time here. So as a next step in this process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an instructor account for you guys so that you can come in and work with some of those features. You can also view the student account within that instructor account as well. And for my determination, because it depends on the product that I create that instructor account for, are you guys looking more so with the English composition title or the English composition with integrated review?
Colton?
Probably with the integrated review. That's what you were showing us,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, so the main difference between that composition and the integrated review is that the integrated review has those scaffolded review chapters before each of the credit level chapters within English composition.
Yeah, I think that's where we need to go with the typical student that we have here.
Mm-hmm. My question would be that, so once they go through this program in Composition 1, it really doesn't matter what textbook we select for Composition 2? Or do you have something for Composition 2?
Oh, we do not have, this is our only English composition title. So we just have that English composition and then the one with the integrated review.
So Colton,
but going through your program, they should be ready to go and Comp 2, hit the ground running, and be ready to assess what's ever before them, right?
Yes, and with that lifetime licensing, once they do go to Composition 2, they still have access to all of this information, all of this software from Composition 1. So if they do get to Composition 2 and say, I need to go back and review, this chapter or this lesson, they still have access to that.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
So we'll make the recommendation. I'm really glad that we connected, because I've been teaching 3 years comp, and I've modified and really couldn't find anything until Miss Marshall sent this to me. So I'm really excited about it, and knowing Carlton is experienced in this area, it's going to make our lives a little easier. And not only that, we can help our students a lot better in accommodating their learning processes.
Wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that feedback, and I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to connect too. So just as the next steps, I'll create that instructor account for you guys. And then I know, what Layla, you mentioned that you all need to be making a decision about these materials by April. So
Yeah.
I'll either check in. Norma mentioned that next week is y'all's spring break, so would it be a good time for me to check back in maybe the week of the 22nd?
Yes, that's also our, oh yes, March 22nd, that's perfect. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'll check back in the weekend of the week of the 22nd. It takes about 24 hours for these instructor accounts to be created, but as soon as I will send over steps for you guys to access that. So just look out for that, and Colton, I'll ship you a copy of those materials too.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Appreciate it.
Thank you both. I hope you want to have a happy Friday and a wonderful weekend.
Oh, you too. Be safe.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.